Yeah, my name is Marek Cebecauer from Herovsky Institute in Prague, and I will be here with you on behalf of the whole working group. Unfortunately, Zach couldn't make it because of the US shutdown, federative government shutdown, sorry. And so I'll start with acknowledging the possibility to be here and enjoy this session on the grounds of First Australians. And so we should pay our respect to their elders past and present, and remind you of the guiding principles of RDA: openness, consensus, harmonization, community-driven approach, that we are non-profit and importantly technology neutral, and that this is all the work of RDA is inclusive, so please feel free to ask whatever questions you wish. There are no bad or no wrong questions. Here we are summarizing. As you see, we have very many co-chairs, almost as many as members, but this is also because we wanted to cover geographically the landscape. And also what was very good was that we managed to have co-chairs on every meeting, which was sometimes difficult because of the time zones and so on. So today's agenda, as you've seen in the title, this is a wrap-up session. So this working group was running for 18 months. It's not yet closed, luckily. We've got the extension for 2 months because we need to process all the documents to the form, and this is the today's session main point, is that you agree with our decision how to provide some recommendation, and we actually split it, the recommendation, and we have 2 field guides you will see in a second. So first, I will introduce what is prepared as a recommendation and these field guides. Then I will ask you a few questions about how happy you are with it, if this is what you expected. Then we were lucky to get funding from RDA Tiger, so I apologize, but this was supposed to be presented by my colleague Gerhard Goldbeck, who is in London, or Cambridge actually, and couldn't join us in person. And unfortunately, we still have the technical issue, so I have to make the summary based on the slides. Then we will have a little group exercise because there are still quite a few open questions which we need to be addressed, and I would like to hear your opinion, what to do next. Of course, first I will ask about what are you missing, so this is why I'm now telling you what I will ask later, because please follow what we did. And if there is something what is still missing and is necessary to do at this platform of RDA working group, it would be good to establish new working group and to fill up these gaps. And during this discussion, we should also decide because there could be some ideas, many ideas, so we should decide what would be the next step. And then we can conclude at the end. So before I go into the documents, I would like to remind you of the situation. This is actually a little bit unfortunate because I don't see the presentation. So what is the history? In 2013, the RDA was founded, and relatively early afterwards, there was an interest group in materials data, so focused on the scientific domain. We are here. And little later was a chemistry research data interest group founded. And in 2021, there were these International Materials Resource Registry recommendations published. And since then, we started a discussion on a new working group. You see both sessions. But then in 2024, this working group was established, and as you see, we've been present on every plenary, and we discussed with the broader community our work. What were the starting objectives? To collect and review existing vocabularies, schemas, and so on. Then we also wanted to propose and verify best practices for material science, identify needs for harmonization, and demonstrate successful implementation of FAIR terminologies in our field. Just running quickly through it. You will see what we managed and what we actually didn't manage and what still needs to be done. So starting with the introduction and presentation on the recommendation of documents, what we decided at the end to do is, because our original plan was 3 documents. One focused on semantic artifacts, one focused on fair maturity of data, and one more implementation document. At the end, we decided, because most of you are familiar with how the working groups are working, sometimes the time is pressing, and we had to a little bit reconsider our plans. So we decided to create one relatively short, it's actually probably very good, that it's a short recommendation, and this recommendation points to the 2 documents, which we didn't want to close, because yeah, we managed to create the structure, we managed to implement, to provide quite some information, but for example, the analysis of available resources was relatively limited. Yeah, we were meeting in a relatively small group, and so we decided that we will provide these recommendations as a field guides, and we will publish it on GitHub, and we will ask community still to contribute. We will regularly check the GitHub, and if there are comments, we will try to implement new information. Of course, this will be moderated, yeah, so it will not be that you can edit the document. Now you can suggest changes, and then these changes needs to be approved in the community, and then we will change the document. So this is how it looks. There is final report with recommendations, and there are 2 field guides. One is focused on fair maturity of semantic artifacts, or someone can know it under the name semantic assets. And the other one is on fair maturity of data which are produced in our fields. So this is, if someone wants to check it now, there is even a QR code. So I will start with the final report and recommendations. I'll wait a minute if you... So there is some introductory part explaining why we did it, some reasoning why is it necessary, but I find this is probably just 1 page, is these recommendations which we learned about during the work of this working group, and that the community embraced fair data principles throughout the research data life cycle. This was very obvious from the beginning, that we are focusing on a data life cycle and how to make data fair during this process. And so it is very important to implement the FAIR principles, or data quality, from the beginning of the data generation, or as early as possible. Not to wait till the end, once the data are produced and you want to publish them. If you want to make data fair later, it's almost impossible. So that's one recommendation. Another recommendation is that the FAIR data principles should be also implemented for the existing or new semantic artifacts. So we frequently speak about fair data, I mean data produced in research fields, but also the semantic artifacts should be fair. Because sometimes you would say, well, this is semantic artifacts, they are published and they are findable, accessible. It's not true, unfortunately, especially in our field of material science and engineering. This is very fragmented, and many of these semantic artifacts are only locally available or very difficult to find. Not speaking of access, interoperability is completely off. So we strongly recommend to do it, and how to do it is written in one of the field guides. Unfortunately, these are the slides which are from Friday. They were still revised. So one very clear issue was during our discussions that, well, there are already quite a few ontologies and semantic artifacts which are scattered, but we should probably much more focus on something more top level or more generally used, which is in line with what is happening in the world. And so what actually comes from me is that we should probably create materials DCAT AP as a derivative, so it's application profile for our field, as a derivative of very classical standard DCAT AP, DCAT application profile. This is a little bit confusing because DCAT AP is also used, the abbreviation for the European Union standard, DCAT standard. So in this particular case, we are speaking of something what is just derived from a basis DCAT for our field. This happened in geosciences, so there exists GeoDCAT AP. This exists in, well, it's not yet done, but exists health DCAT AP, which is going, well, we believe that this is going to be a standard for health science, and so on and so on. So this is what would enormously help our community to create catalogs of data or use the catalogs of data if they would be based on a materials DCAT AP. The findability of data sets, yeah, so at the level of data set would be very good if we have our DCAT application profile for our field. Because the DCAT is very generic, it should just cover any digital catalog, and therefore many classes are there just focusing on the existence of any data set, but not saying anything, for example, about the sample or material. So that's one way, but as I said, this is very good to find that data set, but if I want to go to the datum level, it would be very difficult because this DCAT, the application profiles of this vocabulary are really focused on finding the data set in a digital catalog. Yeah. If I want to search according to some specific terms, I mean, going more into the granularity of metadata, this is not for what DCAT is designed. So now here, and as I said, our field is extremely fragmented, so we should probably consider expanding existing ontologies or existing vocabularies. And this is, here at least we discussed schema.org. We are aware of its problem, that it's kind of commercial system, and but it has a lot of advantages. So, and bioschemas for biohealth food domain is also built on this, even though they a little bit step off recently from this direction. So, but in principle, this would be the direction where to go, and not create just another ontology which will just get somewhere hidden, lost, and not used. So finally, we recognize, and this is something new, which you didn't see even in the conclusions from the chapter, it is very important that we map our semantic artifacts to existing or generic semantic assets. because very often we will need a little bit more specific, create a new term, but it relates to some existing term in the existing top-level ontologies. So it is important to do these mappings, and unfortunately we didn't have time to get much further. We had a joint session with the RDA working group for mappings. We learned about how to do it. I'm actually even familiar with the community because of the EOSC, the European initiative, but we didn't do anything in this direction during the existence of the working group. So these are the 4 recommendations. Please keep those in mind if we didn't forget something. This is the one of the field guides. Again, I'll wait a little bit if you want to open it. It is still with a lot of comments, so it's not cleaned document. That's why we asked for 2 more months to do still a little bit cleaning and additional work on the documents, that it looks more professional. At least in one of the cases, it looks still as a work in progress, which is true. It will be a living document, but we want that to have it a little bit more cleaned up. So, oops, sorry, was it? Good. This document is much longer, and I could spend here the whole session speaking about it, but I don't want to, because that's not important in what in detail is written in this document. This document, what is important is that it was prepared with data engineers or semantic artifact developers in mind. Yeah? So this is not for a standard researcher who is producing data and working on some instruments, doing measurements, and so on and so on. No. This document is really for those, of course it could be a researcher, but for those who would like to help with the definition of semantic artifacts. So there are 17 critical recommendations. What should be done for the semantic artifact to be fair? Of course, there are general recommendations, and we actually mention them in this document because, of course, this is a field for itself, for semantic artifacts. But there are some which we found could be a little bit specific for our field because, and the reason is, and you will see that we have actually a problem for our field, that very often these so-called generic recommendations are built on geosciences or bioinformatics, which is much more further ahead in their developments compared, for example, to our domain. So this is why we created recommendations for our domain. There are links to existing relevant resources, but we still feel that it could be better. We agree with that. That's one of the main reasons why this document should be a living document. Definitions of the terms are provided because this is a very common problem that, as I said, I will say data engineer, and in Europe, half of people, or maybe even more, do not know what is data engineer because it's a term used more in the United States or Northern America. So we have glossary included, and we have also included a graphical representation of relations between, and this is quite important, vocabulary, taxonomy, thesaurus, and ontologies. You would say, yeah, this is available with a Google, you just Google it, or you ask nowadays chatbot, maybe chatbot would do it properly, I believe so, but in our field, many people do not know the difference between these 4 terms. So we preferentially placed it there that we are on the same level of understanding. So what are the critical problems? So where to store semantic artifacts for materials science and related fields? We call them chemistry, but it could be quite broad spectrum in long term. Because there was already a math portal and other activities, and it all ended up unavailable, inaccessible, and so on. So where to do it? Today in the morning, thanks Rolf for inviting Panet person, and he mentioned they have their totally photon and neutron community, and they have it on BioPortal, because BioPortal is running and is quite sustainable. It's confusing probably for photon and neutron community, but this is relatively community built around large infrastructures, or I mean very large infrastructures, whereas in material science, community is completely scattered in the small labs, often in small universities. I'm not sure if they would understand why we are in BioPortal. So it is a solution. I'm not criticizing. I found it actually very interesting and a good short-term solution. But probably we need to find a repository or a platform to publish our semantic artifacts. The question is also that it needs to be updated by the community. On which platform, and now I'm not speaking technical platform, to keep the community, and this comes to the next or the last point of our session, if we are willing to work on it as a community and help to develop semantic artifacts and especially to control them. Because one thing is develop, this is usually quite commonly more attractive, and then to maintain it and update it, it's much less attractive job. So what would be the platform? Is RDA the right platform? I would say yes, but it's my personal opinion. You can have other opinions, and as I said, this we will discuss at the end. And yeah, we need also to talk to other domains. And it was very obvious to me, again, mentioning this person from Panet, that there are already it's a nice ontology of techniques which are largely overlapping with what material science is using, but material science, of course, has many other techniques which are not included because that was not the aim. So should we expand Panet ontology for other techniques, which I would love to, because it's already, they learned the lesson, but they can argue that this would be very difficult, and I have to agree that this is probably not what they want. So can we work next to them, MatNet or whatever? So that would be another thing to do, and especially what is stressed here, that we need to crosstalk to these domains, and again, on what kind of platform. RDA, of course, is a good platform, but how many people are with RDA? So it's a question if it's the only platform we should use. Okay, so that was the field guide on FAIR and semantic assets, and now moving to another field guide, which is also not finalized and will not be complete, I mean, will not be the final version. It will be a very high-level draft still on fair maturity of data in materials science and engineering. And as correctly written here, we want to increase. We don't think that every data set will be completely fair, even no one really knows what means completely fair data set, yeah? For different situation, for different use cases, it means, unfortunately, slightly different thing. So if I don't see anyone taking the QR code. So this document was, in contrast, written not really for data managers or some high-level semantic people, but more for data producers. But again, we are a little bit worried that every researcher will not be completely interested in, I don't know, 15 pages of information about data management. So we had in mind data stewards who should support researchers. So a data steward should read the document and then help end user to improve fairness of their data, or especially to advise them that at every step of data lifecycle, there are some jobs to do to have at the end nicely fair data. So we included one experimental and one computational use case to illustrate what we have in mind. Because as I said, different use cases may mean slightly different thing in terms of FAIR principles. So in this way, we wanted to show our background, where we are starting. And then the document is split according to the steps of data lifecycle, for example, planning or measurement or data acquisition, of course, data processing, analysis. And in every step, we are taking the different, we are providing different information you should keep in mind. What could be, for example, the typical is that people during planning or at some levels forget about provenance. Yeah? So it is explained specifically for a specific step of data lifecycle, which type of provenance should be recorded at this stage. And then there are links again to recommending existing resources. And again, this is probably not rich enough. We are aware of the fact that this still probably requires a bit of work. So this is, again, why we want to share these documents on GitHub and work on it constantly to evolve into the better and better documents. So these were the 3 documents which we created during the existence of the working group, and now is the time to listen to your comments, and I will ask Alex to record for us your comments. So to start the discussion, I put few questions to you, but take it easy if you want to comment from a different perspective. This is one of the 2 moments in today's session when we would be very thankful if you can provide feedback on our work. And I'll find the microphone. So, is there any comment, question? Yeah, I see. Fantastic. Thank you very much for starting, for being the first.
Okay, a comment to one of the points. So I'm not sure if it's right to only address the data stewards, because in the end, all this will be integrated in systems like, for example, repositories, where the researchers again do the input of the metadata, for example. So they don't like to do it, I know, from experience, but they should do it, and then they could come up with a term, for example, that is not included, and they need some way to request the adding of this term, or a redefinition of the term, or something like that. Just keep that in mind.
In a second. I perfectly agree, but this document is actually written slightly differently. It's not about the really granular information, which term when. Well, then it would have 200 pages, and especially in RDA's in-kind contribution, so who would do it? Now, unfortunately, we do not have this kind of guideline. We have a guideline that for data acquisition, don't forget about, I don't remember exactly, but as I said, I remember one which I did was the provenance, which is very common to forget. And this is information, of course, for data producer, that would be lovely. But on the other hand, we believe that the document is written in a way, yes, data producer can read it and would be fantastic if they do, but we believe that this is more for data stewards, and then they remind data producers, or even in some cases in my institution as well, data steward is really helping and providing, for example, in electronic lab books, is creating a template, and this template should follow this advice. This is not done by data producer or standard researcher. I'll first give it to Rolf.
I mean, you wanted to go on the same question. I don't believe there is one single answer to that. Yeah. Because the situation in the different, say, communities are so different. And it is mostly a question of personal resources available. I mean, if there are no data stewards around, then it will be the scientists doing the work. I can report on the situation at our facility, so this is large-scale user facilities, synchrotron light sources. Our users are completely busy doing their science, and they don't, to be honest, they don't care about fair data. They allow us to do things in order to make the data fair, as long as we don't step into their way. So, they are tolerant to allow us to provide nice data formats and to provide to guide them in the right vocabularies and things, as long as their work is not, say, blocked in any way. And but to be honest, they wouldn't do it themselves.
That's completely true what you say, and so maybe it's better to address the infrastructure providers directly. So to tell them, for example, in an electronic lab notebook, make this field mandatory and not optional. And so I'm also an infrastructure provider, and what we did in Radar, Research Data Repository, is we made it quite easy. We were using a type ahead in the fields, so there were suggestions of the terms. So this is exactly what the infrastructures should do. They should read this and implement it. But the thing that I said first, so a possibility to recommend new terms that could also be integrated, right, in the infrastructures and then fed back to the terminologies.
Yeah, maybe we should also mention data infrastructure providers or data curators or something like that. Sorry, was it immediate reaction or?
I think you hinted at the point I was going to make, and I think it maybe sort of bridges the two things at this stage, is to make sure you do include something about the infrastructure providers or those developing the tools, developing the platforms, who should read this, should understand what their systems need to support, so that when the users come along and do have to interact and maybe don't have a data steward, hopefully it doesn't matter because the system guides them through it and that sort of thing. So that might be the get out, to sort of like not get too caught up in whether the researchers are in a position to cope with this right now, but really target those tool developers, system developers, and say, read this. It will make your community's lives much better.
Thank you very much, and it's noted, just for your information.
Thank you. Oliver Köppler from TRB, German National Library of Science and Technology. First, I want to point out, so you mentioned this, that you need a place for your semantic artifact catalogs. So we offer such a service as TIB, Terminology Service, where our communities can create collections of the semantic artifacts of interest for their communities. And it even implements what Felix mentioned, a workflow for adding this to repositories, ELNs, so that you can reuse the terminologies hosted there, and also implement a workflow for term suggestions or curation of the terminology. So this is something we already offer, and it's open for everyone. And so we have the chemistry community there, we have the engineering sciences, culture, and it's growing very fast. So this might be of interest for you as well. Another thing I would like to point out is you mentioned DCAT application profiles. We are currently working within NFDI together with chemistry and catalysis on a DCAT Chem AP, extending the DCAT application profiles towards processes, analytical methods, samples, materials, and stuff like this. So this might be something of interest as well. And if I may, going back to the discussion we had earlier, I really disagree this separation of who's responsible for data annotation, right? So the approach of data stewards or data scientists is not scalable. And it's a native responsibility of researchers as part of their research work to make their data understandable, reproducible, to supporting their research statements also. And we, as infrastructure providers, should focus on providing easy-to-use tools to make their life easier. But I'm always hearing this argument, this is an extra burden for researchers. It's not an extra burden. It was there from the very beginning that the data they produce is part of the research.
Okay, it's noted. And yeah, data steward is support to the data producer. So it's not responsibility of data steward, it's responsibility of the data producer, but it's good to support them.
Just a remark on that. I guess we should not speak of different persons who should do this and that. We should speak of roles. So everybody who, say, engages in making these data sets fair is a data steward at that moment. Could be the researcher themselves, could be a hired dedicated data steward in their institute, could be somebody else helping them, but it is a role, and we should just discuss it as a role.
Yeah, and I've forgotten to thank you for the offer to host the ontology in long term. Is it even for global standards? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Richard with CDIF. I was just hoping to see something about specific recommendations about what vocabularies are you actually talking about that you need. Is there anything about that in these documents?
Yes, but very limited, and we hope to get more, but as I said, we didn't succeed in this. This is something we unfortunately didn't get very far, and yeah, I don't know if I'm in the position to speak about the reason, because just to make it clear, I'm an immunologist, so helping my colleagues from Institute of Physical Chemistry who are doing material science. In immunology, we are in the same situation, but I'm, of course, as a biologist, using a lot of bioinformatics tools which are much more developed. So that's probably my advantage, knowing the biohealth food area, but it's also a disadvantage. I cannot answer your question, even though in 3-4 years I learned quite a bit about this field. And yeah, I don't really see established. I can see hundreds of ontologies, vocabularies, whatever. And then I talk to in my working group, because in Czech Republic we have a domain-specific working groups under the initiative of IOSC. And I'm chairing the material science and engineering, and even techniques which are, for example, in PANET, they start immediately to develop a new ontology, and it's an effort to explain them. Don't do it in Brno on the street Kavkova, yeah? So, no, that's not how you should do it. So I would love to provide more information, and this is why the document will be on GitHub, because in the community there could be quite a few people who can point us to the ontologies of vocabulary, which are very good, which maybe are not yet perfectly maintained and accessible, but this could be changed by the community. We can help them, and we can do something to bring this already pre-made semantic artifacts to life back. So this is exactly the aim. And how are we with online information? Because, are there any comments? No, and I'll double check with Gerhard. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
I just wanted to suggest that you should maybe try to have a call for feedback on this directly towards the initiatives that are working on this. And two come directly into my mind. One is the NFDI in Germany, where I'm also heavily involved, so the National Research Data Infrastructure Initiative, and the other is the Helmholtz metadata collaboration, also in Germany. And if you collect a list of these and call directly out to these initiatives, you will get the right feedback, I guess.
Yes, but it will be very nation-related, and actually those, even I know what they will write down, so because I'm next door. But what UK wants to say about it, what Japan wants to say about it, what, well, luckily with Japan and Korea we are partially harmonized, but I don't know, we don't have French colleagues involved, we don't have Latin America, and so on and so on. So, but yes, we need calls, because if we will just place it on GitHub and now write in recommendation, it's there, probably very little will happen. So, and but the NFDI and Helmholtz and these kind of initiatives are easy to approach for us, and what we are trying is really to approach a little bit further. Yeah, so thank you for mentioning it, but our knowledge base is probably very similar here. Okay, more comments towards my questions? Well, you didn't read it right now, but I hope you got at least the feeling what is in. So, do these documents meet your expectations in terms of context and scope? There were some comments already. Okay. Identification of inaccuracies and significant gaps is probably a homework. We would be really pleased if you can, in the collaborative notes you will receive after this meeting, provide us with the feedback. Okay, so we should probably move on and go into the part which I'm a little bit nervous about, because this was supposed to be presented by Gerhard Goldbeck, who is online. So Gerhard, please be tolerant about what I will say now. He is online listening. So there was open call of RDA Tiger, European Union funded project, and Gerhard, or our working group, better say, applied, and we've got support for one person, which is Otello Rascioni. And he was helping to read through the documentations and what were the points to address, explore semantic artifacts and best practice that are relevant to material science community and can be utilized relatively easily. Yeah, this is the main point we discussed already. And how can we adopt standards such as schema.org and DCAT? What should be included in materials-related metadata, and how to stimulate the community to contribute. Yeah, the last point is extremely important. There was a workshop. I attended this workshop, so I can say, yes, it was superbly interesting. There was Jakub Klimek from Charles University in Prague, who was speaking about GeoDCAT AP, so one of the clones, which is already published, and it's in the version of 3. So that's why we are mentioning it very frequently, because it's very mature. the chem decad AP was mentioned. That's still probably only draft at the moment. There was a presentation of Zach on materials and schema.org. Unfortunately, not much is happening there. There was presentation from Simon Steuer from Data Europe about how these data are catalogized and especially what searching and indexing is provided by Data Europe. And there was a presentation from Elin from PSDI, and she was speaking about data integration, and Guillaume Gasnet from ESRF on data management in there, and they have this Add More Power project on improvements in the data management in this facility. And so this was very lively discussion during the workshop, and then Otello created, based on this discussion and analysis of the documentation and learning about DCAT and schema.org and other things, he together with Gerhard created 3 recommendation panels, or how to call it. First, there is about scenarios, so establish scenarios to adopt for publishing scientific data. One way is bottom-up for contributing data. The contributing data are aggregated by specialized search engines or data portals. So the advantage is that it's potentially every stakeholder could become a data provider. Disadvantage is potential divergence, or in use of metadata, the contributors need some know-how. Top-down, a specific semantic approach is provided by some authority as to the tasks of receiving, validating, storing, and distributing the contributed data sets. Advantage is much higher level of conformity, and disadvantage need to agreements. Yeah, this is what we discussed before. There is need to agree and establish what that authority is and relevant information management systems around it and platforms that support researchers in contributing data. This is what we discussed. Second section is technical, and here you may argue, but in the working group and also Otello making a research from the literature concluded that the ideal is to go via adoption of DCAD AP as foundational metadata schema. It's for those who are from Europe. For us, it's standard in European data portal, but for your information, it's also proposed for MARDA paper. And materials domain specific application profile should be established. Materials DCAD AP, I already mentioned it, and this is something what, if funded, we will do. I mean, we even have a Jakub Klimek from Geo DCAD AP on board, who should provide the standardization across the domains. And we want to follow the example of bioschema.org, so from biohealth food domain on the different level, on the datum level, and create a recommended profile using already existing schema.org metadata. Yeah, this could be discussed. Normalize terminology with controlled vocabularies, avoid open text fields for critical metadata. This is probably difficult because many repositories leave the many fields as a free text. Avoid open text fields, I read it. Use lists containing links to persistent identifiers or control terms, and use existing resources like EuroSciVoc. Design reusable metadata templates for common data and workflows. Yeah, so not only data should be described, but also experimental or computational workflows. That's a very important point. And this is a third section, methodological, engage with domain scientists, data stewards and software developers. So this goes to the comments on the fact that already the tools should be designed in a way that the researchers can produce fair data relatively straightforward way. And these domain scientists and these people should define metadata needs, use application profiles as a collaborative tool to formalize shared practices and expectations, provide immediate feedback to researchers on how metadata improves searchability, best practices, and so on and so on. Use successful use cases where metadata led to tangible benefits for scientists. Yes, definitely this is important. Integrate metadata collection into ELNs and workflow tools. We already discussed capturing context as experiments are performed. Reduce manual burden by automating metadata extraction wherever possible. Encourage national level templates and cross-domain alignment. Identify controlled vocabularies and metadata profiles to ensure compatibility across disciplines and countries. Develop searchable registries of metadata templates and schemas, allowing researchers to find and adopt existing models. An open repository could be used to collect and refine schemas, using community feedback and adoption rate as a democratic approach to standardization. So this is the last slide from Gerhard. Do we have any comment in the chat? Because Gerhard can hear me, and I don't have anything in my email from him, what I messed up. Give me a second, just if, no. Okay, so.
One question, what do you mean by data publication? Because at least in our situation, we have, say, different, say, products, I would say, that need to be handled quite differently. So we have raw data, the data that we take from the experiments, and at least in our situation, these raw data become openly accessible after an embargo period. But I wouldn't call that a publication because they are not curated. So they come in, these raw data sets come in numbers that nobody can really curate them, the metadata in a meaningful way, at least not manually. So we can only capture what can be automatically captured. And completely separate to that, we do have a data publication workflow. But these data sets are normally the data that support a particular journal article. And these are completely different data than the raw data that you take from the experiment. So my question is, what do you call a data publication here?
Well, if I publish data, I publish any data independent of what, of course they have a different quality of different level of curation and so on and so on. But if it's made public, it's published in, I don't know, I'm not native English speaker, so, but it sounds to me like this is the way we are publishing data. What I want to say is that I always do it, so I feel like an ambassador of this idea. It's not probably my idea, but I would split data from publication. Data are facts, most probably facts. Especially the raw data should be facts. Publication, the article, the text coming from researchers is an interpretation or hypothesis of researchers what these data mean. These data could be treated by someone else and publish another 20 publications. There will be 20 opinions on the same data, which is perfectly fine in science.
But I mean, there is something in between. So there is the raw data, and there's some data analysis that takes place and that uses the raw data and that produces a new data set. And this new data set is produced exactly in the view of a journal publication. So these data analyzed data is published independently of the journal article, but it only covers the data that will be in that journal.
I think that's not always the case, this one-to-one relationship. So often we see data publications of the raw data, and then later data publication of some curated data, or let's say post-processed data, and then the publication, the journal article that describes the data, somehow interprets it. And I would say a data publication is it as soon as it gets a DOI and some metadata attached to it.
Yep, I agree. But well, this is a nice discussion, but it could go forever. Sorry, I didn't see you.
I think, so, I think on the previous slide you talked about the equivalent of bioschemas for materials. I guess, I guess there could be some interesting things when you start getting into the chemistry part of that, because bioschemas has chemical substance, molecular entity, and I know from talking to Gerhard, he doesn't always agree with what other people, how other people want to describe these things. So there could be some interesting kind of like conflicts between terms that have to be resolved, or some coalescence that comes up with common vocabularies that recognise chemistry as the central science.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I would just not call it conflict, because it's similar to decad AP. You can have different descriptions of the same term, and this is exactly why you have a geo decad AP and statistics decad AP. And there, if I apologize now, I don't remember the term, but it has completely different description in the two decades vocabularies, which is okay. Do we have comment? No, thank you for checking. I'm just still checking my email. If Gerhard is sending something, no. Okay. Good. Any other comment with respect to the conclusions from the RDA project? No. So let's go to the, last thing, and that's group exercise, which we are doing almost all the time, and I'm happy because I like it. And it's a forward-looking exercise. So just to remind you about what happened, working group what will happen is that in December 2025 the group will be closed. It's final 2 months. And we believe that recommendations will be published, and the 2 field guides will be shared with the community on GitHub for further review and improvement. And as we already discussed, we need somehow to push for feedback. We cannot just place it there and so on and so on. But this is something what I believe doesn't require too much discussion. What needs definitely to discuss is, did we forget something what requires another working group, or something which we didn't mention, because the points 2 and 3 are those which are suggesting. It's still, you can comment on this, of course. You can suggest getting slightly different direction, but the first question is really if something what we didn't say yet and would require a working group relatively soon to sort out some of the urgent issue. Doesn't seem so. So we can go to the question number 2. We are planning to develop materials decad AP. First, do you agree with this direction? Can I ask you to do some exercise and put hand up if you agree? Even those who do not feel qualified, because they are usually wrong, sorry for saying it this way. So everyone who agrees that we should generate materials decad AP, please hand up. Hand up, really, it helps your blood flow, believe me. Thank you very much. So it seems that this plan is kind of approved. Yeah, definitely.
I think that DCAT AP is especially well suited because I recently heard during the Cordy conference where the colleagues from Health's DCAT AP presented, they mentioned that the European data space projects, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was quite a number, also plan to go into the direction to develop DCAT application profiles. So this might be something that evolve across disciplines, which makes it extremely important to align with other initiatives. So, and therefore, we would be happy to contribute and discuss approaches to develop same design patterns.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You are already answering my question. If you are willing to contribute, or just a second. I am a little Marek from a small town in Slovakia. I know about 20 developments of a domain-specific DCAT. So,
just a comment also. I'm from the photon and neutron community. This is not to be confused with material science. The photon and neutron community is a set of experimental techniques that can be applied in all scientific domains. Having said that, we do have the Daphne project in Germany, and we are right at the moment, within the NFDI, and we are right in the moment, say, preparing for the second phase of Daphne. And one of the tasks that we will take on ourselves is to work on metadata standards describing photon and neutron experiments. And of course, it would be very interesting to align that, say, work with whatever happens there.
yeah, thank you. So again, another person who kind of said, yes, we will contribute in whatever way. This is very important because your work will go to the datum level and DCAT is data set level, and it's very important to find out to some extent where is the borderline, or to what extent we want to make, because DCAT AP should not be too complicated. Yeah, it should not go into the semantic granularity of, I don't know, temperature or parameters in your instruments. Yeah, this is, there are certain key informations which should appear even at the data set level, but then there is a truckload of information which should not be at the DCAT level.
We are definitely not yet in the position to decide on a particular technology. So I don't know whether we are going for DCAT or for something else. We will do some work on these metadata standards for the description of the photon and neutron experiments.
Thank you. More comments with respect to materials DCAT AP? And if not, I will push it a little bit further, and that's, are you really willing to contribute? We have two answers. Would there be interest to contribute? How it is done? We need to collect the information about the existing stuff, so we will probably align with Chem DCAT AP as much as possible, because as you already mentioned, processes and so on and so on. This will be very important. Would UKRI be, so then, yeah, PSDI definitely, with Eileen, yeah, definitely, that's essential. Japan, will you help? Yeah. Yeah, sorry, you are correct. Sorry. Will you help? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I will not be personal. Thanks. So I hope you will help us. It will be more ad hoc meetings. We can or I would phrase it differently. We can make work group of RDA, we can ask RDA to set up a working group which will be dedicated to support materials DCAT AP development in a second. That's one option, but as long as I understand the development of this DCAT, it requires really a dedicated person. If we are funded, we will have the dedicated person. If we are not funded, that would be much more difficult. But it is not, or as long as I understood it, it is not that there is a regular need to communicate. It's more irregular. So maybe this working group should cover both, not just materials DCAT AP, but also the MatChem terms in some other in a way of schema.org or bioschemas. So think, what would you suggest where to go?
Only a RDA technical suggestion. You are not obliged to close down your working group after 18 months. You also have the option to transition in maintenance mode. That means you would be formally still be an endorsed RDA group, and you would have all the means of communication that an RDA group has, without the obligation to deliver results. So you could stay just as a framework to continue that work.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yes, that's good, but without obligation to produce some results, it sounds a little bit risky, but okay, that's one. Yeah, it was a very good comment.
Just to address that concern, I think that was what happened with the Scholix working group. It actually existed for quite a number of years in a sort of maintenance mode, and it did at least a couple of iterations of the spec that it produced. That's now moved somewhere else. I think that group's subsequently been dissolved formally, but you have something concrete, which you said earlier. You're thinking about how are you going to maintain it, what platform should you use to do it, and I think all the time that maintenance option is there, and you've got activity and you've got a community who's willing to meet to continue discussions. Is worth pursuing.
Thank you. And my last question, I'll take advantage of having Alex around. Because we will be kind of dissolved, finished, we cannot get support from RDA Tiger, am I right?
Not for the moment, but we don't know what's still in the cards for the future. But until December is the current support. Since I have the microphone, I'm going a couple of steps back. There was a comment on the app from Gerhard, and I have added the links there, and Gerhard's helping as well, I think. So we've added the notes and the collaborative notes. There's a link about a workshop, the CEN, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, CEN Workshop Agreement on Materials Characterization.
Thank you very much, Alex. Other opinion with respect to the future working group or maintenance of this one?
But this is a new piece of work, the materials DCAT and the MatChem terms, or is it really an extension of the same work? For me, the continuation of the current group is perfectly appropriate for maintaining your field guides, because that's the continuation of the same work. Whereas it sounds like a new piece of work to me, this.
Yeah, it looks so, but on the other hand, if I don't want to jump through too many slides, but if we would come to the original plan, the DCAT, extension of DCAT and and addition of MatChem terms would perfectly fit into the original terms, which we didn't manage to.
But it's not maintenance.
No.
Yeah, reflecting on the Scholix experience again, there were actually 2 iterations of that group, and I can't remember if we had to go through the spin-up of a new use case or whether it carried over. But you know, it's worth talking to RDA people about what they're happy to entertain, and hopefully they'll be pragmatic.
Okay, I'll talk to RDA people. More suggestions? Criticism? What went wrong? We said at the beginning, so to protect us. I didn't bring it up very specifically, but the point 3 goes to enrich top-level ontologies and vocabularies with MatChem terms. Could you, from top of your head, suggest some which should be handled, which we should consider, not just bioschemas.org or something like that? We have, of course, again, very European-centric view. We have EMMO ontology. We have, again, German-centric view, Platform Material Digital, PMD-Co, but they are probably the best developed. We have the US-based Materials Commons, the MRR. So we can somehow harmonize them. This is possible, but do you have in mind a top level or some ontology or some vocabulary which we should consider for adopting for material sciences better? Okay, not. This is the classical problem of our working group. This is probably where we are not very strong in. Probably we need some people from biohealth, food or geosciences to support us, to help us understanding when to go domain specific and when to go with Provo or whatever the top level ontologies. Yeah, maybe. Oliver, sorry for disturbing your dreams. I'll repeat my question, or did you hear it?
I can try to comment a little bit on it. Because I was wondering, indeed, what your intention would be to extend top-level ontologies with domain-specific terms. Yeah, I would address domain-specific ontologies, and this will actually happen once you implement the terminologies in systems, right? So we observed this in the electronic notebooks, also in the repositories, that once these terms are available, researchers come back to us and say, okay, there's something missing, right? And then you are in the loop of creating these vocabularies, terminologies to add then new MatChem terms, right? And the challenge will be to align these with existing approaches or existing top-level ontologies.
Yeah, but my question was more towards which existing middle or top-level ontologies to handle. I mentioned demo and PMD core for material sciences, or Provo as a more top-level generic, even though still specific. But do you have in mind something because as I said, I have a feeling that we are in material sciences, forgetting and about some important ontology or this semantic resource which we should use more in our field, and we are not aware of it.
So I'm not sure if you're aware of the publication, because it's quite new. It's from September, I think, where the group from Harald Sack at FIZ Karlsruhe published a landscape analysis of ontologies relevant for material sciences. And this might be a starting point, and I assume you did something like landscape analysis at the very beginning of the research group as well. Oh, okay. That was actually my question, if one of the last steps of the current work program would be to re-evaluate what has happened in between, because there's a lot of stuff going on with regards to semantic artifacts development, so you probably have new terminologies, semantic artifacts right now, which you can incorporate into your approach at the moment. So that might be something of the last step.
Okay, thank you very much. And I don't remember if this was the paper which was mentioned by Gerhard during last meeting, but if not, would you mind adding the link to the publication to the collaborative notes? Thank you very much. More comments? Any? Yeah, Rolf?
I have a completely other comment, not directly answering your question, but are you aware of the World Fair Plus project? That is, or it is not one project, it's a World Fair Plus initiative in a way, and they are actively looking for, say, people or communities. So they're developing the CDIF, the cross-domain interoperability framework, and they are actively looking for, say, use cases where CDIF could be applied to. And it might, I don't know whether that fits, but it might be a good idea to speak to those people whether there is some common ground for, say, collaboration.
Thank you very much. I have no idea how to answer, but I'll communicate it with co-chairs.
If I can just add to that, because I was part of the World Fair project, the first one, there was work done on the CDIF and chemistry. There was an RDA working group that was very much related, so I can put some resources in the collaborative notes and maybe some people to talk to if that would be of any help.
I'm worried there was also something what was called nano science, nano materials. I checked the outputs and I apologize, but I was not that excited. But to put it this way. There were other use cases or other domains which were much better. That's probably why I was a little bit... this was not chemistry, this was nanomaterials.
Yeah. So I mean, Bruno was involved in the Chemistry World Fair one. So I think just to manage expectations there around this particular topic, there were three main deliverables. One was around trying to come up with general guidelines for people who want to write policy for making chemistry data fair. It will have alluded to a lot of the IU PAC things and other things that are already out there, and it might be worth a read just to get a feel for it. The other two, one was about getting together training material and seeing what it would take to bring a community together to do that, and the other was thinking towards services that might help link across resources. Not an awful lot about ontologies, apart from anything that might be referenced in the guidance document.
Yep. Okay, thank you for updating. As I said, I was specifically speaking of nanomaterials, not chemistry. That was a little bit behind all the other domains involved. But we should consider World Fair Plus if there is something interesting. Will they have open calls? Because sometimes this is quite intensive. If it's time intensive, it's difficult to follow. Sorry.
Again, based on a session yesterday, there is not a dedicated pot of money behind World Fair Plus. World Fair Plus is more about assimilating projects that might be addressing particularly adoption of CDIF. So I guess that's something to look at as well and understand what this work might ultimately fit in with CDIF in terms, but yeah, there's stuff around there about vocabularies and things like that.
Thank you very much for clarification. More comments? If not, I would like to thank you for coming to our, sorry, too fast. And it's It's not going back, unfortunately. Sorry. That was a big thank you for coming to this session, for very active discussions, and thank you, Alex, for writing down the notes. Yeah, see you hopefully at some point to continue this work.